What is Art? By Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 4. So what comes of all these definitions of beauty put forward by the science of aesthetics? Set aside the definitions that are simply inaccurate and do not cover the concept of art at all. The ones that place beauty in usefulness, in fitness to a purpose, in symmetry, in order, in proportion, in smoothness, in the harmony of parts, in unity within variety, or in various combinations of these principles. Set aside these unsatisfactory attempts at an objective definition. What remains is that all the aesthetic definitions of beauty come down to two basic views. The first is that beauty is something existing in itself, one of the manifestations of the absolutely perfect, of the idea of the spirit of the will of God. The second is that beauty is a certain kind of pleasure that we receive, a pleasure with no aim of personal gain. The first definition was accepted by Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, and Schopenhauer, and by the philosophizing Frenchmen, Cousin, Jouffroy, Ravaisan, and others. I leave the second-rate writers on aesthetics unnamed. This same objective and mystical definition of beauty is held by more than half of the educated people of our time. It is a very widespread understanding of beauty, especially among the older generation. The second understanding that beauty is a certain kind of pleasure we receive, which has no aim of personal gain, is current mainly among the English writers on aesthetics. It is shared by the other half of our society, and above all by the younger half. So there are only two definitions of beauty, and it could not be otherwise. One is objective and mystical. It melts the concept of beauty into the highest perfection, into God. That definition is fantastic and rests on nothing. The other is very simple and easy to understand. It is subjective, and it holds beauty to be whatever pleases. To the word pleases, I do not add the words without aim of gain, because the word pleases already implies by itself that no thought of gain is present. So on the one hand, beauty is understood as something mystical and very lofty, but unfortunately also very vague, and therefore taking in philosophy, religion, and life itself. That is how it goes with Schelling and Hegel and with their German and French followers. Or else, on the other hand, beauty is only a special kind of disinterested enjoyment that we receive. That is how it must be understood on the definition of Kant and his followers. And then the concept of beauty, clear as it may seem, is unfortunately just as inexact, because it widens in the other direction. It takes in the enjoyment we get from drink, from food, from the touch of soft skin and the like, as Diao and Kralik and others admit. It is true that if we follow how the doctrine of beauty developed in aesthetics, we can see this. From the founding of the science, the metaphysical definition of beauty prevails. The closer we come to our own time, the more an experimental definition emerges, one that has lately taken on a physiological character. We even meet writers on aesthetics such as Véron and Sully, who try to do without the concept of beauty altogether. But such writers have very little success. Most of the public, and most artists and scholars too, hold firmly to the concept of beauty as the majority of books on aesthetics define it. That is, either as something mystical or metaphysical, or as a special kind of enjoyment. What, then, in essence, is this concept of beauty, which the people of our circle and our time cling to so stubbornly when they set out to define art? In the subjective sense, we call beauty whatever gives us a certain kind of enjoyment. In the objective sense, we call beauty something absolutely perfect that exists outside us. But we come to know that absolutely perfect thing outside us and acknowledge it as such only because its manifestation gives us a certain kind of enjoyment. So the objective definition is nothing but the subjective one put in other words. In essence, both understandings of beauty come down to a certain kind of enjoyment we receive. We call beauty whatever pleases us, without arousing desire in us. With matters standing so, you would think it natural for the science of art to stop being satisfied with a definition of art founded on beauty, that is, on what pleases. You would think it would look for a general definition, one that fits all works of art, and by which we could decide whether a thing belongs to art or not. But there is no such definition. The reader can see this from the extracts I have quoted from the books on aesthetics, and still more clearly from those books themselves, if he takes the trouble to read them. All the attempts to define absolute beauty in itself, as an imitation of nature, as fitness to a purpose, as the correspondence of parts, as symmetry, as harmony, as unity and variety, and so on, either define nothing at all, or define only certain features of certain works of art. They come nowhere near covering everything that people have always considered art, and consider art still. There is no objective definition of beauty. The definitions that exist the metaphysical one and the experimental one alike, come down to the subjective definition, and strange as it is to say to this, art is whatever manifests beauty, and beauty is whatever pleases, without arousing desire. Many writers on aesthetics have felt how weak and unsteady such a definition is. To give it a foundation, they ask themselves why a thing pleases, and so they turn the question of beauty into a question of taste. Hutcheson, Voltaire, Diderot, and others did exactly that. But every attempt to define what taste is leads nowhere, as the reader can see both from the history of aesthetics and from experience. There is no explanation of why one thing pleases one man and displeases another, or the other way round. So the whole of existing aesthetics does not do what we might expect of an intellectual activity that calls itself a science. We might expect it to determine the properties and laws of art, or of the beautiful, if beauty is the content of art, or the properties of taste, if taste decides the question of art and of its worth. And then, on the basis of those laws, to acknowledge as art the works that fit them, and to throw out the works that do not. It does nothing of the kind. It begins by accepting a certain class of works as good, because they please us, and then it puts together a theory of art, into which every work that pleases a certain circle of people will fit. There is a canon of art, by which the works we favor in our circle are acknowledged to be art. Phidias, Sophocles, Homer, Titian, Raphael, Bach, Beethoven, Dante, Shakespeare, Goethe, and the rest. And the judgments of aesthetics must be such as to take in all these works. Judgments of that kind pass unchallenged in the literature of aesthetics. Judgments on the worth and importance of art, founded not on any laws by which we hold this or that to be good or bad, but on whether the work coincides with the canon of art we have set up. The other day I was reading a book by Volkelt, and it is far from a poor one. Discussing the demand for morality in works of art, the author says plainly that it is wrong to make any such demand of art, and in proof he offers this. If we allowed the demand, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and Goethe's Wilhelm Meister would not fit the definition of good art, and since both belong to the canon of art, the demand must be unjust. Therefore we must find a definition of art that these works will fit. And in place of the demand for morality, Volkelt lays down the demand for the significant as the foundation of art. All the existing books on aesthetics are put together on this plan. Instead of giving a definition of true art, and then judging what is art and what is not by whether a work fits that definition or fails to fit it, they take a certain set of works that people of a certain circle happen to like for one reason or another, and call them art. Then a definition of art is invented that will cover all these works. I met a remarkable confirmation of this method not long ago in another very good book, Muther's History of the Art of the 19th Century. When he comes to describe the pre-Raphaelites, the decadents and the symbolists, who have already been taken into the canon of art, he not only does not venture to condemn this tendency, but works hard to widen his frame so that it will hold the pre-Raphaelites, the decadents and the symbolists as well, since they appear to him a legitimate reaction against the excesses of naturalism. Once it is accepted among the upper classes of our society, a theory is worked out at once to explain it and give it legal standing. It is as if there had never been periods in history when certain exceptional circles of people accepted and approved a false, ugly, and senseless art that left no trace behind it and was afterwards entirely forgotten. And how far the senselessness and the ugliness of art can go, especially when art knows that it is held to be infallible, as it is in our day, we can see from what is being done in the art of our own circle now. So the theory of art founded on beauty, set out in the books on aesthetics and held in dim outline by the public, is nothing but this. It calls good whatever has pleased us and pleases us still, that is, whatever pleases a certain circle of people. To define any human activity, we have to understand its meaning and its importance. And to understand the meaning and importance of any human activity, we must first of all consider that activity in itself, in its causes and its consequences, and not merely in relation to the pleasure we get from it. If we take the aim of an activity to be nothing but our own enjoyment, and define it by that enjoyment alone, the definition will obviously be false. That is exactly what has happened with the definition of art. Take the question of food. It occurs to nobody to see the importance of food and the pleasure we get from eating it. Everyone understands that the satisfaction of our taste can never serve as the ground for judging the merit of food, and therefore we have no right whatever to suppose that the dinners we are used to and enjoy, with their cayenne pepper, their Limburg cheese, and their alcohol, are the best human food there is. In just the same way, beauty, that is, whatever pleases us, can never serve as the ground for defining art, and the set of objects that give us pleasure can never serve as the model of what art ought to be. To see the aim and purpose of art and the enjoyment we get from it is to do what people at the lowest stage of moral development do. Savages, for instance. They see the aim and the importance of food and the pleasure they get from eating it. People who believe that the aim and purpose of food is enjoyment cannot know what eating really means. In just the same way, people who take enjoyment to be the aim of art cannot know what art means or what it is for. They fasten a false and exclusive aim, the aim of enjoyment, onto an activity whose meaning lies in its connection with the other phenomena of life. Men came to understand that the meaning of eating is the nourishment of the body only when they stopped taking enjoyment to be the aim of that activity. It is the same with art. Men will understand the meaning of art only when they stop taking beauty, that is, enjoyment, to be the aim of that activity. To make beauty the aim of art, or a certain kind of enjoyment received from art, not only fails to help us define what art is, it does the opposite. It shifts the question into a region entirely foreign to art, into metaphysical, psychological, physiological, and even historical arguments about why this work pleases some people, while that one displeases others or pleases them, and so it makes the definition impossible. Arguing about why one man likes pears and another meat does nothing to define what nourishment essentially is. It is the same with questions of taste in art, and all discussion of art comes round to those questions in spite of itself. Settling them does nothing to make clear what that particular human activity we call art really consists in. It makes such clarity completely impossible. We asked what this art is, this art for which the labor of millions of people is sacrificed, and human lives themselves and even morality. From the existing books on aesthetics, we received answers, and they all come to this. The aim of art is beauty. Beauty is known by the enjoyment it gives, and the enjoyment of art is a good and important thing. That is to say, enjoyment is good because it is enjoyment. So what passes for a definition of art is no definition of art at all. It is only a dodge to justify two things: the sacrifices people make in the name of this imagined art, and the selfish enjoyment and the immorality of the art we have. And that is why, strange as it is to say, in spite of the mountains of books written about art, no exact definition of art has been made to this day. The reason is that the concept of art has been founded on the concept of be.